everybody was in love with Elvis. And he was working with another hit rock and roller, Ricky Nelson, which I liked Ricky, but I was really in love with Elvis. I was 14 when I fell in love with Elvis. But years later, we married, and our life is going on. We had children, and one day this phone call comes, and the guy said, "Is James there?" And I said, "Well, he's in the shower. He's getting ready to go to work." He was doing session work, which is recordings for different artists in those days. And so they said, "Well, there's someone that would like to talk to him right now." And I said, "Well, hold on just a minute." And I went and I said, "James, someone really has to talk to you right now." And he said, "Well, tell him I'll call him back." So I went back to the phone and said, "You know how you are when you're young? You do everything your husband tells you, right?" And if it happened today, I wouldn't even ask. I'd get on the phone and start talking to myself and give him the phone later. But I said, "No, it's really important." I kept going back and forth. And so finally, they said, "Well, it's Elvis wants to speak to James." And I said, "Elvis?" I mean, I was not starstruck, believe me. We had been recording with everyone you can think of that were superstars. But this was my superstar. And so he finally got on the phone, and I said, in those days we had phones in every part of the house. There's no cell phone in those days. And I said, "Can I go in and listen on the other extension?" And he said, "What?" I mean, he couldn't even imagine what I was thinking. He's a man, for Pete's sake. And so anyway, he said no, and I did exactly what he said. But to this day, do I regret that? Because I really wanted to hear his voice, his talking voice, just to hear him. But I did meet him later when we had our first rehearsal, and I went with my children to the rehearsal. They were little at that time. And he was very gracious, very, very, very gracious. And Priscilla was very gracious. And he was the man I thought he was. He was the most gorgeous man I had ever seen in my entire life, except my husband. And she was the most beautiful woman. They looked like they were mannequins, that they weren't real. That somebody painted them that beautiful, but they really were real, and they were really nice people. So that day was my first day of my memory of both of them, and it was a wonderful memory. Thank you for asking me that question.
Eine kurze Zusammenfassung für die deutschsprachigen Reisenden. Also ich glaube, man braucht gar nicht viel dazu zu sagen. Louise hat gesagt, Elvis war für sie schon seit ihrem 14. Lebensjahr der Superstar. Sie war verliebt in Elvis, und als sie James kennengelernt hat, hat er schon mit ganz vielen großen Stars gearbeitet. Aber als dann dieser berühmte Anruf kam und es tatsächlich so war, dass Elvis mit James sprechen wollte, um dann natürlich die berühmte TCB-Band zu gründen, da konnte sie es kaum glauben. Ja? Also James stand wohl unter der Dusche zu dem Zeitpunkt, und sie war am Apparat, es ging mal hin und her und her und hin, und sie war ganz aufgeregt, ihn nachher, auch später, bei den Aufnahmesession, bei der ersten Session auch zu erleben. Und sie hat eben nochmal gesagt, ganz anschaulich, glaube ich auch, dass sie noch nie jemanden gesehen hatte, auch in Kombination mit Priscilla, so nett, so auch attraktiv, man muss eigentlich sagen schön, ja, wie Elvis. Und das ist eben eine Erinnerung, die ihr immer bleiben wird auch. So, Donna, it's your turn. Is this on?
Okay. I came into the picture in 1972. I was the flight attendant for Holiday Airlines, which was the charter plane that Elvis chartered for the band and all the equipment. And at the end of the tour we were on, I met Ron, and he had asked me out for dinner, and he said at the end of the evening, "Do you want to meet Elvis?" And like Louise, when I was a young kid, I was in love with Elvis Presley. Listened to all his music. GI Blues was one of my favorite, actually. And so, I tried to be nonchalant and, it's okay. I don't have to meet him. But he goes, "No, come on." Well, he and at that time he was with Linda Thompson, so we went out to his suite, and we were in El Paso, Texas at the time. So he took me in there, and the door opened, and I saw Elvis Presley standing there. And like you, the man was larger than life, absolutely gorgeous man. And it was just, you just shake, and he comes up and he shakes your hand, and you go, But it was an amazing experience meeting him. And we spent many times together, and I have many fond memories of a lot of things that we had with him. So it was wonderful. And the man, to this day, Louise and I spend a lot of time looking at the big screen, and we just both look at each other and say, the charisma that this man has, even still today, is a one-of-a-kind thing. And I'm glad he has brought all of us together.
Mir fällt es schwer, das zu übersetzen, weil ich glaube, das braucht man nicht zu übersetzen. Das spricht eigentlich auch Bände. Are there any questions in the audience? So let's go. No questions in the audience. It's hard to believe. Up there. Da oben in der Mitte, Thomas, genau. Ja.
When they're not on tour, playing in the bands and practicing, I suppose they'd have to practice it, but when they're at home, what do they enjoy doing away from music? So obviously music's their work and their profession. What's their interests and hobbies when they're not actually playing?
That's a great question. We live in different cities, so we don't see each other that much. And our husbands are both in still recording industry and touring with other close to 200 to 300 days a year. So we don't see them that much. Donna travels with Ronnie, but I don't. I keep the home front running and the foundation that we have for kids. But when James comes home, I still don't see him. It's just crazy. He is a car nut, and he is always with his buddies, going everywhere. I mean, from all over the state to different states, looking for these great buys and these great cars. And they'll even sell them to each other after they buy them. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. But we're getting ready to open up a guitar and car museum in Shreveport, and it will benefit the kids. And we've already bought the building. We're raising money now for it. So we'll have a lot of artist cars in that building along with their guitars. But we have a stage coming that's being built for the kids to come and perform and rehearse, and everything is no charge for children. And we give guitars all over the world, and hospitals, schools, and we still do that. We're absolutely working that office every day, and it's a full-time job, but we do it no money, but for the love of our
children of the world, because they are our future, and I'm sure everyone realizes that. So we put on shows, and hopefully the next show might be in Nashville, and we can have some of our good friends come and be on it, and we can fit it in their schedule. But anyway, you can get on our website and find out all the information about it. But James we live on a lake, and he has 2 or 3 boats, but he never fishes. I don't know. They go out, they don't come and fish. And I think they just like to run the motor myself. So anyway, he has a great life at home, I can tell you. A lot of people love him, and he loves them. I've never seen anyone love people as much as my husband. I mean, we can go to the grocery store like normal couples. No, he's always telling everybody about every product in the store, about his car, about his career, and then we finally check out. So if you haven't met him, be sure to walk up and meet him, because you'll know that's the type of person he is.
Ganz kurz, Luis hat gerade erzählt, dass halt auch wenn James zu Hause ist, er eigentlich doch nicht zu Hause ist, weil er sehr viel tut für die Stiftung, die sie beide auch haben, und die sich für Kinder einsetzen, denen es nicht so gut geht, die fördern, Musikförderung betreiben, und er hat ja eben nach den Hobbys gefragt auch, und ein Hobby ist sicherlich von James auch tatsächlich, das sind Autos, Oldtimer auch, wie wir sagen, die er halt hegt und pflegt, und wie gesagt, damit geht auch viel Zeit drauf, aber im Vordergrund steht die Wohltätigkeitsarbeit. Es gibt da übrigens auch eine Website, James Burton Foundation.
Well, let's see. We don't have a lot of time at home. We're on the road a lot. But when we are home, Ron basically relaxes. We have a lot of children and grandchildren, so we spend a lot of time with them. And when he's relaxing, I'm catching up on everything that we didn't do when we were home because we were gone so much. That's basically it.
Donna sagt auch, also Ronnie und sie sind so viel unterwegs, dass sie gar nicht viel Zeit zu Hause haben, und wenn sie zu Hause sind, dann entspannen sie halt, treffen Familie, treffen Freunde, sie haben viele Kinder, viele Enkelkinder, und so bleibt eigentlich gar nicht viel Zeit zum Luft holen. Aber sie machen alles das, wozu sie halt sonst nicht kommen. Okay, was gibt es noch für Fragen? Any more questions? Da. Und Thomas, wenn du da warst, da unten ist auch noch eine Frage gleich, ja?
Hello, and I'm going to ask this question for my son Jude, and he wants to know, was the TCB band together before the Elvis, or did it happen by chance through playing the Elvis?
Well, Donna was there. Donna is younger. But, no, Elvis called James that night to see if he would go on the road with him to Vegas. And James had not traveled on the road in probably 15 years, and he said no. And he said, oh, James, and so they talked 2 or 3 times for several hours at a time. And you know, if you knew Elvis, maybe some of you did, there is just, the word no is not in his vocabulary. He doesn't understand that word. So after talking to James, he agreed that he would get him a band because he wanted to come back with new image, new powerful singing, and his old band was busy doing other things. And so he wanted a bigger band and so forth. And so James thought about it and decided he'd get session musicians. Session musicians, there's a handful of them that actually do all the recording for all the artists. And in LA, they were called the Wrecking Crew. In Nashville, they were called the Nashville Cats. And there's probably maybe 11, 12 of them, maybe all together. In case some of them can't come, they'll sub in one of the other guys. This is sort of an education talk. but anyway, so James got session musicians, which if you're a session musician, you have to walk in any session, play anything, any type of music with any artist, from Jimi Hendrix to Frank Sinatra. It doesn't matter. And you have to be on your game, and you have to be creative, and that's why they're hiring you. So, and that's why there's a lot of great players around the world, but it's hard to do sessions. It's really stressful, and you are on your game every minute. So, and you never do a bad session. You're only as good as your last session. So everyone has to be great. And so he got these great guys. He called them, asked them to come and play for Elvis and interview for the job. And they did, and Elvis loved them. Elvis just loved them. And so that's how the TCB band came together. And James is still in that world, so is Ronnie and Glenn and everybody. But when they get back together, and they're not usually together because their careers are so separated, but when they do, that's the best band ever in history. And they'll tell you that. They forget how great each other are to play with, except when they get back together. There is a secret love affair between their playing that James has played with tons of bands through the world, and so has Ronnie. And it's not there. I mean, it's great and it's powerful, but it's never like the TCB band. That's just a very special band ever, and maybe it's because of playing with Elvis and you felt that love and power that you were putting out with him, because that band was jumping off stage in your face before Elvis ever walked out. And then when he walked out, it's like you started screaming because it was too incredible. Especially the women. But it was really an incredible experience to have in person. And I'm sorry if you didn't get to see that you missed it. But you know, he's gone, and he really is gone. He's dead. He's dead, but his spirit lives on forever. And it lives on through us. And that's what's so wonderful about having Elvis fans and Elvis friends and Elvis cruises and Elvis fan clubs and Elvis tribute artists is because we're all giving him the tribute that he deserves. And he is a one and only artist. There'll never be another one. Believe me, we've all played with so many different artists in the world that are really superstars. But they will never have what Elvis had. He had the voice, he had the moves, and he had the charisma and an aura about him that was just so spiritual that it's hard to explain. But you do receive it sometimes through his music and through his films. But when people tell you they know he was standing behind them when they turned around, and there he was, and they didn't even really know it, but they sensed it. That happened to me over and over and over and over. I mean, he'd just walk up on you, and the spirit around him, you turned around. It was It was not spooky, it was beautiful. So he was an incredible person and still is a beautiful spirit. And I wanted to say one more thing before I'm over and then I'm through, but people ask me also, one, is he gone? Really? Yes. But his spirit lives on forever inside of us. And two, was he a Christian? And absolutely, he is a Christian. He is in heaven. And we will all see him again, which is a wonderful feeling.
Thomas, da vorne war noch eine Frage. In der Zeit nutze ich das. Ganz kurze Zusammenfassung. Es ging nochmal darum, dass die TCB-Band sich erst kurz vor dem Engagement in Las Vegas 1969 gefunden hat, weil gefragt worden ist, ob es die TCB-Band schon vorher gab oder halt erst, oder ja, also ob die schon vorher zusammengespielt haben oder ob Alice sie erst zusammengestellt hat. Und Luis hat erzählt, dass im Verlauf der Jahre wirklich auch so eine ganz besondere Harmonie zwischen den Musikern entstanden ist. Und sie sagt, es ist ganz schwer zu erklären, was das eigentlich ist, aber sie sagt, wahrscheinlich kommt es auch daher, mit so einem charismatischen Künstler gespielt zu haben. Das schweißt auch zusammen und obwohl sie ja ganz lange nicht mehr miteinander gespielt haben, haben sie sich wiedergefunden und spielen jetzt auch Elvis zu Ehren und das hat Luis ganz eindrucksvoll geschildert.
Thank you. You ladies have husbands who've had such amazing careers, not only with Elvis, but with so many other performers, made possible through your support, I'm sure. Of all the songs that your husbands have recorded, which is your own personal favorite?
Are you talking about with Elvis?
I was asking more because their world, I mean, we love Elvis, that's why we're here, but their world extended beyond Elvis, and all of those songs, regardless of who it was, which one is your favorite with your husband on it?
My favorite is on his album, God Loves You, or Spiritual Strings of James Burton, and it's People Get Ready. He actually sings it and plays it, and my son plays on it, and our family is in on that song, and it's really, really good. My favorite with Elvis, Ghetto in the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds. I don't know, there's so many of them. It's every song is special. I'm going to tell you. Every song that Elvis sang, I don't care whose song it was, it could be anybody else's song. When he sang it, it was his song after that. Because he sang it from the heart, and when he did sing, it was like he's singing to every person sitting there, one on one, like he was singing it to me, and I was one of thousands in the audience. But I felt that, and I think every single person felt that. And that's the love he had when he gave and he started singing, and his talent. He could sing any song better than any other artist could. And I don't know, Donna has maybe a special one that she knows that she likes.
Maybe Can't Help Falling in Love with You. It's one of my favorites. Memories is one of my favorites. Play Me from Neil Diamond. That's one of my favorites. There's so many. These guys have worked with lists of entertainers. It's hard to pick one.
Thank you. Another one?
Hello, I'm from Sweden, and I have met James and Ronnie several times in Sweden. James I met 2 years ago in a town in the southern part of Sweden, and I actually have that song, People Get Ready, with James Burton at home. And I can verify that he's a wonderful guy to talk to, Ronnie I saw last year in Dublin with Neil Diamond. But my question is, I always wondered, 10 years ago I think, TCB was in Sweden playing for 500 people, small studio, just the 4 of them. And a month later they are playing for 30,000 somewhere else in the world. They must love playing, because you know what I'm getting at. They are playing for everyone, it seems. Do you have any thoughts about that they really love to play, either if it's 10 people or 10,000 in the audience?
I don't think it matters how many are in the audience. There could be one and they'll do the best performance they can. People have asked Ron many times, are you going to retire? And he's going to play until he can't play anymore, because he loves what he does. That's why he does it.
Well, with James, the same thing. He will play because it's in his body to play. It's in his brain to play. That's what he was born for. And God gave him that talent, and thank God he listened and played, because he was playing the broom at 5 years old. Thank God he got a guitar. But yeah, people ask James too, when are you going to retire? And he says, to what? I mean, yeah, I mean, I just, James, and he's, I don't know if you guys really know him, but he's extreme ADHD. So he is never still 1 second. And that comes out through his playing, too. That's the only time he's still. And it makes him very creative, and he would be very unhappy in life never playing again. So that's never going to happen, and it doesn't matter how many people are in the audience. Like Donna said, there's one person out there, and believe me, we have done concerts that weren't promoted, and there weren't very many people there, which there were supposed to be thousands, and there weren't. And they put an incredible, all their energy into that show, because that person may only have one opportunity in their life to ever come hear that band. And they would not want to give them a bad show, if that's the purpose. And so we always say that, and all the guys do, and they always play like this is their first and show to play, and it's going to be their best. So if you ever heard them, they always give their best. They don't know how else to play.
Next question, please.
Hello, hi, my name is Heidi. I just have a question. I really would question you this. You said you have a lot of fun memories, and I would ask, please tell us all of them. I know that's not possible, but maybe you have a couple of stories that you would like to share, fun stories with Elvis, touching stories with Elvis. I think we would all love to hear them. Thanks.
Maybe there's a special one. Maybe there's a special one coming through your mind.
Yeah. Well, for me, the special one for me was one time we were upstairs on the top floor of his suite at the Hilton, which that was where everybody wanted to go. And we were up there, and all of a sudden everybody was going from the living room, which seemed like it had 18,000 couches in it. It was humongous. And they were all running toward the dining room. And I'm sitting there pretty much by myself thinking, I wonder what's going on. And all of a sudden, Elvis comes to the door, and he has his Bible in his hand. Now, I don't know what that means, because I've never been up there when that happened. And so he comes directly to me because I'm the only one sitting on the couches, and he starts opening up this Bible that looks like a fan. You know, he's used it so much, it's fanned open, it would never close. And he starts telling me about Scripture and what the Bible means in different areas, and literally starts witnessing to me and preaching to me. And it was an experience that I'm glad I had, because if I hadn't been at that moment, at that place, I would have never experienced that. But I guess a lot of the others in the room had experienced it a lot of times, and so they knew what was coming. But that was, to me, one of the most incredible moments. And we sat there a long, like maybe an hour or two, and he really would bend your ear on the Bible, and he knew the Bible. And I'm going to tell you something else about Elvis. He was a brilliant man. Just because you think he didn't have a college education, this man read all the time. Yeah, Donna knows that too. And he was brilliant. You could talk to him about anything scientifically, anything in the world, anything about any cars, anything. And he knew more than you did. So that's how brilliant he was.
Anna, what about your memories?
Well, I have a couple stories that I can think of. Again, up in the suite, everybody spent a lot of time up there. To show you what kind of man he was, the room was, again, full of hundreds of people, it seemed like, but probably not. And we walked in the room one night, and he stopped. He was over talking to somebody way over in the corner, and he made it a point to stop and walk across the room and say hello to us and give us hugs and kisses, and we won't talk about that, but it was amazing that this person would stop and, just make sure he greeted everybody that came in. He was very special in that way and never wanted anybody to feel left out. One other quick story, we were in, I think it was Anaheim, and this was early on in my being with them, and we happened to have a hotel room a couple of floors underneath where he was, and I really had no idea the amazement of people, fans, that would stand in the parking lot all night long and scream Elvis's name, Elvis, all night long. The man could not get any sleep. We could not get any sleep. But it was just amazing how crowds would just swarm wherever he was. You see that on TV. You see him when they go after Michael Jackson or the Beatles. But Elvis, it was a wonder why he spent so much time at night, out, because he couldn't go out in the daytime. He just couldn't do it. He was mobbed, and it wasn't something where, I watched Neil Diamond. He walks through a hotel lobby or something, and people just go, oh, that's Neil Diamond or whatever. But when Elvis walked through someplace, he was mobbed. People wanted pieces of him. They tried to grab his hands, his arms, his rings, his hair. So he got to the point where he couldn't be out in daylight anymore, and he, had to hide and disguise himself, and so that was a sad part about his life. But it was just amazing how people would just go to all extremes to try to get him to look out the window, or wave to them. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that.
Any more questions? Thomas, gleich hier vorne. Ja, gleich.
Hi, I'm Alex from Austria, and my question is, what did you do when you first heard that Elvis was was dead, what were your reactions and your husband's reactions?
Start on it.
Well, we didn't believe it. We happened to be at home. Ron was supposed to be on the show plane with everybody else, but we had just had our second child, and so he was given permission to stay home one more day and then catch up with the group the next day. And my mother called me and said, turn on the news, Donna, you need to see what's going on. And she told me what happened, and we just didn't believe it, but we turned on the news and found out. And of course, we called Graceland and wanted to verify if it was official, and it was. And basically, we just spent a very somber day crying and thinking about everything, and, what can you do? It was tragic, really. But that's what we were doing.
Louise.
Usually when James went on tour with Elvis for that length of time, I would take our children and we would go back to Louisiana, where we're from, and visit for, if it's a month, we'd go for a month, and the kids would spend the summer there and have a great time, and I'd visit my family. And so we had already gone, because James was leaving the next day, and someone came over to his mother's house where I was and said, I just heard on the radio that Elvis passed away. And I said, they're always doing that. Don't listen to that. The media's terrible. They just want to get a hype on a story. That's not true. And so pretty soon, James called me, and because I would never believe something I ever heard on the TV or the radio. Never. Because we know how distorted things are in the world. But anyway, he called me and he told me that they were on the plane going to Bangor, Maine, and that the plane had landed. They asked the pilots to land the plane. It was a private plane. And asked everyone to get off the plane, including the pilots. And James can give you his side of this more than me. I just remember what he said. And said that the reason they did, because they had all worked for Elvis forever, and when they got off and went in the terminal, they told them that to turn around and go back, that Elvis had passed away. And it's like, even today when I say it and remember it, it's very it's terrible. I mean, I'm almost in tears now. But anyway, he went home and called me and said, I don't know what to do. I mean, you're there, I'm here, I need to get to Graceland right now. And I said, just take your suitcase and go to the airport, and I will meet you in Nashville. And that's what we did. And so he went up there and stayed in the home and hung it to the funeral, and I went up there. And it was probably the most stressful, hurtful, I can't even express how, even today, thinking back, it was for us. And James's office was filled with pictures, and we could never look at a movie, we could never listen to his music, and to us, after the funeral, it was like we're working for somebody else. We're just not working for Elvis, even though we were at the funeral, even though we know that, even though we saw him. It's like in our mind, we couldn't handle it unless, because he had become a good friend. You have to understand, we were all young. We had never lost a friend. We had never lost a family member. We were like stunned.
And so it hit all of us really hard. But we didn't watch anything for 10 years. We just couldn't. I mean, if I listened to a record, James would start crying, I would cry. So we just didn't. And in our mind, how we handled it and worked with it, as time took over, and then we could listen again. But we had to get through the grief part first. And we still really don't think that. We think we're just working for someone else, because that's what we do in our careers, is, we're just working for another artist. So, but it was, and still is, very, very terrible time. And, but now it's, as you mature in life and you get used to the situation, I think what's made it better for us, and I don't know if you guys know this, but none of us would be here if it wasn't for Priscilla Presley. She was at the funeral. She stepped up with her daughter, and she was alongside of Verna at that funeral, because he was very ill. I don't know if you guys knew how ill he was. And she was right there, and she took over the business end, and she was smart enough to get brilliant men to make a board of directors and make EPE happen. And without that, we wouldn't be meeting each other, and we wouldn't be expressing our love through each other for Elvis. And she took on a lot of ridicule. And I never understood that. I never did, but I can tell you she is a devoted, loving wife to Elvis Presley today and the first day they met. And we're very, very blessed to have her in his life. So I want to give kudos to Priscilla Presley, because she deserves everything.
Ganz kurz, weil ich denke, das müssen auch die verstehen, die kein Englisch sprechen, aber Deutsch. Die Frage ging natürlich darum, wie die beiden es erfahren haben, dass Elvis gestorben ist, und wie die Reaktion von den Damen war und von ihren Männern. Und es ist nicht schwer zu erklären, dass natürlich alle sehr traurig waren, sehr mitgenommen waren, und dass sie auch, Louise hat es gerade auch gesagt, eine Zeit lang gar keine Elvis-Songs hören konnten, ohne dabei wirklich zu weinen und sehr traurig zu sein, weil sie hatten auch nicht nur ihren Boss verloren, für den ja die Musiker gearbeitet haben, sondern eben auch einen Freund, ein Familienmitglied. Und das war wirklich sehr, sehr hart. Und was ich auch sehr wichtig finde, dass halt Louise auch sagt, was sie auch an euch alle weitergeben möchte, ist, dass so etwas, wie wir das hier tun und die beiden eben auch hier an der Talkshow teilnehmen, so etwas wäre nicht möglich, wenn es nicht Priscilla Presley geben würde, die bei der Beerdigung dabei war, die Vernon unterstützt hat, der zu dem Zeitpunkt schon sehr krank war, die EPE möglich gemacht hat, die Graceland geöffnet hat, und sie hat an der Stelle nochmal ein herzliches Dankeschön und einen großen Respekt an Priscilla gegeben, und das, denke ich, ist für alle auch wichtig zu verstehen.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. It was moving, and I feel that my question now is actually a little too much. It probably came after. I think that should almost have been a finale. I agree with everything you said about Priscilla. I would like to say I think she's done a fabulous job. I think what she did for Graceland has been fabulous. It's elegant, it's discreet. My question to you was to you as women, being the wives and not in the spotlight, was really, how did you cope with all that? How did you manage with families, with children? How did you manage?
Well,
Donna had more children than I did. But I can tell you, both of us are business women. I mean, I'm not saying we're brilliant, we're not, no one really is, but we're smart women. And I'm not bragging. And I've had several companies. Donna's had careers. So having our children with our husbands was something we were really prepared for and could handle because, you know, we were out in the world and we were handling other situations. And we grew as they grew. And, you know, your life changes when you're first married and, you know, it's different, and then you have children, and then it's different, and your career changes, and it's different. So the two of you grow together as a team and change together as a team. And that's the only way I know that I handled it, and I know Donna too, but she can tell you her side.
It's true. You know, you didn't have time to sit around and feel sorry for yourself. We just didn't. We just did what we had to do. We knew what our husbands did. They were out on the road, touring, working, and you just tried to keep it all together so that when they came home, they could feel comfortable, and you know, you didn't want to nag at them about this, that, and the other thing. You just did what you had to do.
It's like with our children, they had a lot of free time. Their dad was gone a lot, or in the studio working a lot, and they knew they could have any of their friends over when their dad wasn't home. But when their dad was home, that's his time, and he was respected for that. And so, believe me, they had friends travel around the world with us, and we still today, we have our granddaughter with us today on this cruise, and we're so proud of her. She's 21 and she's finished her third year of college, and we're thrilled. So we're used to having children with us, but when they're home, they really need peace and quiet and rest. Because their life, people think it's fun to travel and play and travel and well, Donna can tell you, it's work. It's really work. And so when they come home, they do need that peace. And so you know, every one of us learn to change as our lives evolve, and that's what we do. But I don't know if Southern women are raised like this. My mother always said, the man is the head of the house, always. He wears the pants. Never forget that. But the woman is the neck that turns the head. So that was the best advice my mother ever gave me.
Hello. Could you describe for us the first time you ever saw an Elvis concert with your husband? So maybe it was the opening night on the 31st of July 1969, and for Donna, perhaps another show. How was it to see Elvis for the first time live, and how was the show for you?
The same tour that I met Ron. At the end of the tour, we were telling this story to the Presleys earlier today. The one and only time Colonel Parker ever did anything for Ron was asking if there was one ticket available for a show that was coming up at the end of the tour we did. And I had been the only person on the flight crew that had not seen the show. So as they pulled into Long Beach, Colonel Parker was sitting there waiting for the bus to come in, and he walked up and gave Ron this ticket. It had to be the golden ticket, right? So I got to go to the show. It was in Long Beach, 1972. And I was in the 6th row, and everybody thought, oh, who is she sitting in the middle in the 6th row? But the curtain opened, and it was indescribable, the feeling of what happened, the electricity, just watching all those guys on the stage, and, you know, for me, watching my husband play the drums like he did. I happened to play drums when I was in high school, and I was always attracted to drums, but just watching him, I couldn't believe the talent that he had, and everybody else on the stage. All of them were just amazing. And, you know, you see things, you know, on screen about what happened, but as Elvis came on that stage, the flashes, you know, they didn't have cell phones in those days where you could take pictures. It was all flash. From the time he walked out, I mean, the stadiums, the arenas, the auditoriums just were blinding with flashlights through the whole show. No wonder they had trouble seeing things. But it is an indescribable thing, really. Fascinating.
The first time I saw him, we went to the rehearsal briefly because I had children with me. So we left before the rehearsal was over. So I really didn't meet him, but maybe 30 minutes at that time. But I wanted my children to meet him. So we left, and James continued working at the rehearsal with the other guys. And so when we went to Vegas, I didn't go opening night. I wanted to, but there were so many superstars who carried more weight than me, and they were trying to get in that show, and so we were asked to come at a later date. And so I didn't get to go on the opening night, which I wish I had, but that didn't work, and it's okay, because when I did go, they set us at center stage, and I had my 2 children. I have a daughter that was 5 and a son that was 8. And they set us right at the stage. And I thought, what a blessing this is, you know, right at the stage with my children. So as the show, I mean, the curtain opened, and before he ever came out, people were screaming to the top of their lungs for nothing. I mean, the excitement, and this was every show. It was like that, and it was like screaming, 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 and I'm thinking, my gosh, you know. But when he came out, it was just so electrifying, and he did an incredible show. I've never seen anybody perform like that, ever. And we had been in the business for a lot of years, but performers are fabulous, but they're not electrifying like he was. I'm sorry. And we love the Rolling Stones. We just tell you, he just had a superpower there. But so while he was going along kissing all the girls, which, you know, they probably paid us $8 to get up on the front row, and he came to my son and daughter and kissed my daughter and shook my son's hand and shook his hand, and so he bent over to kiss me, thinking I was a girl, you know, 3 down, because he didn't recognize me. And I looked up to him and I said, Elvis, I'm James's wife. And so...
But I love to thank you very much for being with us, Donna and Louise, and I think the audience is with me and join in a warm hand, a warm applause for those 2 special ladies. Thank you so much. Mrs. Burton and Mrs. Donna Touch. And please stay with us for the next question. stanza section with Jerry Schilling and the TCB band, and make up your mind about some new questions you can ask them. See you in a few minutes.